From the moment Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun appeared together on screen, something clicked in a way that felt effortless rather than rehearsed. Their chemistry in Suspicious Partner wasn't loud or exaggerated. It lived in the pauses, in the way their characters listened to each other, in glances that lingered just a second longer than scripted. Viewers didn't just watch a romance unfold, they felt it breathing between scenes. What made it unforgettable was how natural it seemed. Behind the cameras, staff often spoke about how little direction they needed during emotional scenes. There was no overacting, no need to force tension. Both actors trusted the moment, and that trust translated into something rare, believability. But when the drama ended, something else began. Silence. No immediate reunion projects. No public declarations. No carefully staged interactions to keep fan interest alive. In an industry where on-screen couples are often milked for years, Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun did the opposite. They stepped away quietly. And that silence is what continues to intrigue fans. Over the years, interviews offered fragments but never the full picture. Chang-wook spoke about valuing sincerity over spectacle, about connections that don't need explaining. Nam Ji-hyun, equally reserved, emphasized respect, boundaries, and growth beyond a single role. Their words never contradicted each other. They simply aligned. Fans began to notice how often their names surfaced together, not through headlines, but through memories. Old clips resurfaced. Behind-the-scenes moments gained new meaning. What once seemed casual now felt intentional in hindsight. There were also the moments that never made the news. Industry events where they arrived separately but left within minutes of each other. Mutual acquaintances who avoided answering direct questions. Projects declined that would have placed them in overlapping schedules. Choices that suggested careful consideration rather than coincidence. Yet nothing was ever confirmed. And perhaps that's the point. What connects Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun isn't a public narrative. It's a shared understanding of restraint. Of knowing when to let a story live quietly rather than forcing it into the spotlight. In recent years, both actors have evolved. Chang-wook's performances have grown deeper, more introspective. Nam Ji-hyun has chosen roles that prioritize emotional realism over trend-driven popularity. They are no longer chasing the same things they once did, and yet, their paths continue to feel strangely parallel. Fans often ask whether silence means distance. But sometimes, silence means protection. Protection of a memory. Of a connection that doesn't need to be explained to be real. Of a chapter that remains meaningful precisely because it was never overexposed. As 2026 unfolds, speculation returns, not because of rumors, but because of timing. Because both actors now stand at points in their careers where intention matters more than momentum. And if their story ever continues, on screen or otherwise, it won't arrive with noise. It will arrive quietly, just like it began. What makes the connection between Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun endure isn't what was shown, but what was never explained. In an era where every interaction is documented and every relationship is analyzed frame by frame, their story exists almost entirely in the margins. And yet, it refuses to fade. Fans who revisit Suspicious Partner today often say the same thing. The chemistry feels even stronger now than it did then. Not because the scenes changed, but because the context did. Time has a way of revealing what was genuine and what was manufactured. Their performances don't feel dated. They feel grounded. That's because what they shared on screen wasn't dependent on trends. It was built on listening. On emotional timing. On an understanding that intimacy doesn't always need words. After the drama, both actors took noticeably different but complementary paths. Chang-wook leaned into complexity, choosing characters burdened by moral conflict, emotional restraint, and quiet resilience. Nam Ji-hyun gravitated toward roles that required internal strength, intelligence, and emotional maturity rather than overt romance. Neither chased repetition. Neither returned to what was safe. And yet, when asked about meaningful past projects, both would circle back to the same themes: trust, balance, comfort. Never names. Just feelings. Over time, fans began to wonder if their silence was a form of closure, or something else entirely. Because silence doesn't always mean an ending. Sometimes, it means a story was complete enough to be left untouched. There were moments when a reunion seemed possible. Script rumors that never materialized. Casting talks that stalled. Projects that, on paper, would have been perfect, but quietly dissolved before confirmation. Industry insiders described it not as avoidance, but selectiveness. As if both were unwilling to revisit something unless it could be honored properly. That level of restraint is rare. It suggests that whatever connected them wasn't disposable. It wasn't a promotional tool or a phase to be recycled. It was something they both understood the weight of. And that understanding shaped how they moved forward. Fans still debate what really connects Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun. Friendship, mutual respect, unfinished feelings, or simply a shared moment that changed them in ways they never felt the need to explain. The truth may be simpler and more complex than any theory. They met at a time when neither was trying to prove anything. They trusted each other enough to be vulnerable on screen. And when it ended, they let it end without spectacle. That, in itself, is a kind of connection. As 2026 continues, interest resurfaces not because of rumors, but because of readiness. Because both actors now stand as artists who choose meaning over momentum. And if their paths ever cross again, whether in a project, a collaboration, or a moment fans never get to see, it won't be framed as a comeback. It will be framed as continuation. Not of a romance, but of respect. And sometimes, that is the strongest bond of all. What many fans don't realize is that some stories leave marks not because they continue, but because they stop at the right moment. Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun's connection belongs to that rare category. When Suspicious Partner concluded, there was no sense of exhaustion between them. No visible strain, no public fatigue from overexposure. Instead, there was a clean break. Almost intentional. As if both understood that what they had created together didn't need to be repeated to be remembered. That decision alone reshaped how fans viewed them. In interviews years later, Chang-wook often spoke about the importance of timing. How certain roles arrive when an actor is ready to receive them, not force them. Nam Ji-hyun echoed similar sentiments, emphasizing how meaningful experiences should be protected, not diluted. Different voices. Same philosophy. Their silence, then, was not absence. It was preservation. Behind the scenes, people who worked on the drama still described the same dynamic. Professional. Comfortable. Uncomplicated. There was no hierarchy between them, no ego clashes, no need to dominate a scene. They met each other where the moment required, and stepped back when it didn't. That kind of balance leaves an impression. As years passed, fans noticed how carefully both avoided exploiting nostalgia. No anniversary posts. No throwback content timed for attention. No public reminiscing designed to stir emotion. And yet, the bond never felt erased. Instead, it lived quietly in how they spoke about acting, about growth, about choosing projects with intention. The echoes were subtle, but unmistakable to those who listened closely. This is why, even now, the idea of Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun feels unresolved, not because something is missing, but because something was left intact. In an industry that thrives on repetition, they chose restraint. And restraint often speaks louder than confirmation. As 2026 unfolds, both stand in a new phase of their careers, less driven by urgency, more guided by meaning. They no longer need to prove chemistry. They no longer need to revisit old roles to remind audiences of their impact. The memory exists on its own. And perhaps that's the true connection fans sense. Not a promise of reunion. Not a hidden romance. But a shared understanding that some moments are powerful because they remain untouched. If their paths cross again, it will not be to recreate the past. It will be to reflect who they've become. And if they never do, the story remains complete, because it ended with honesty. In a world obsessed with noise, Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun chose silence. And in that silence, their connection continues to speak. There is a reason why Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun's story keeps resurfacing, even without new headlines. It represents something rare in modern entertainment, A connection that was never rushed, never over-explained, and never used as currency. As fans grow older with them, perspectives shift. What once felt like an unfinished romance now feels like a lesson in timing. In restraint. In knowing when to let something remain meaningful by not touching it again. Their dynamic on Suspicious Partner didn't rely on dramatic confessions or exaggerated passion. It relied on trust. On the ability to sit in silence without discomfort. That kind of chemistry isn't learned, it's recognized. And recognition leaves a mark. Years later, when Chang-wook speaks about projects that shaped him emotionally, there's a noticeable softness in his tone. When Nam Ji-hyun reflects on roles that allowed her to grow, she speaks about safety, understanding, and mutual respect. Different interviews. Same emotional language. Fans began to realize that whatever existed between them was not fragile. It didn't need constant reassurance or public affirmation. It was strong enough to stand alone, without explanation. This is why speculation never fully disappears. Not because people are chasing confirmation, but because the story feels human. It mirrors real life, connections that don't fit neatly into labels, moments that change us without demanding permanence. In 2026, as both actors stand firmly in their own identities, the curiosity isn't about whether they will reunite. It's about whether the industry still allows stories like theirs to exist. Stories without spectacle. Without forced conclusions. Without answers spelled out for everyone to consume. Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun's connection reminds us that not every meaningful bond becomes a headline. Some exist only in memory, in growth, in the quiet confidence of having shared something real. And perhaps that's why fans continue to return to their story, not to uncover a secret, but to feel that sincerity again. Because in a world of constant exposure, silence becomes powerful. And in their silence, Chang-wook and Nam Ji-hyun left behind something lasting. Not a rumor. Not a promise. But a moment that still resonates.